September and June asks, hey, Adam, how does pH affect my beer? You can look at pH in multiple stages of the process, September. Obviously, you can look at it in the mash. You can look at it in the kettle. From a big picture standpoint, what you want to be doing on the hot side like that is making sure that you're within generally acceptable ranges for those things. Sometimes I think you can drive yourself crazy chasing some of those things. I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to track down and try different things with your pH in the mash, in the kettle, post boil, just from a baseline standpoint, making sure you're hitting appropriate ranges for things like that. And then kind of the next element of it is tracking pH drop and then pH drift back up again toward the end of your fermentation, because that pH is going to drop as that yeast gets going in your beer. And then as it's cleaning up, that pH will usually tick back up again a little bit. You can start answering some questions for yourself. And this is where that final pH of the beer, you can have some dramatic things happen with the beer in the pint, right? You can be taking anything from making a beer really crisp and balanced. You can push it into the acidic range, if you're dropping too far down for what the beer is supposed to be. On the flip side of it, if your pH isn't low enough, again, off the top, I think we're targeting 4.4 or 4.5 and under for shelf stability. If you're going over that, I know there's some people that are doing their hazies way over that range. And it's really easy to do that because with really big fat dry hops, you can be pushing your pH back up again. And so it's easy to push yourself out of food safe range. And I know there's a lot of hot boy, hazy breweries out there that are doing things like that are creating beers that are shelf stable from pH standpoint. That's their call, and that's good for them. If they're happy with the beer that they're making and it's blowing off the shelves, you do you. I do think really tracking your pH on your tail end of fermentation, when that pH starts creeping back up again, you're gonna want to start getting that yeast off your beer, especially potentially on the commercial side. With a little bit more pressure on that yeast cake. Once you're 2 days terminal on your gravity, you're going to see that pH start creeping up again, start dropping that yeast off the bottom so you can prevent some of that autolysis stuff going on. All that said, though, I think playing with the finished pH in your beer can create some really beautiful nuance and really it can really accomplish some of the intangible things with the beer as well, right? I would encourage you, especially if you're in a situation where you're making a volume of beer, maybe you can cut off little bits here and there and dose them up. And it wouldn't be exactly, but use like, a food grade lactic, food grade phosphoric, and dose up smaller amounts and test that and see what your lager's tasting like at 4.4, at 4.2, at 4, at 3.8, baby. You know what I mean? Do some things. September continues. Do you correct any pH post fermentation? And if so, with what type of acid? I'm assuming you would say. I think you can go a couple different directions with it. If you've gone all lactic on the hot side, I know a lot of people love using lactic acid, like the character that it gives, but I know sometimes lactic acid can have a threshold. I believe the wise and virtuous John H. Palmer was recommending that if you have a residual alkalinity of 250 or above, you might want to fact check me. That gives you a good reason to go back and listen to the John Palmer Industry Pro podcast on Adam Makes Beer. But I believe it was around 250. He was saying that might be a little bit difficult to adjust all of the water with lactic because it might have a flavor carry over into the finished beer that would be more than what you wanted. And so maybe if you're worried about going too far with your acid adjustment post with lactic, you could do it with something a little bit more neutral, like maybe phosphoric. Again, all food grade. The higher percentage, the better, because that means the less you would have to do that with. You can also dose beers in the bright tank. If you have something in the bright tank and you're like, this feels a little flabby, I'm not sure what I want to do with it. We cut some off, we dose it with some lactic or phosphoric, and it makes the beer pop. Do your math, push that stuff into your tank, circulate it a little bit, bubble it up a little bit, whatever you're comfortable doing, get that integrated on that side, and you might be able to brighten that beer up a little bit. Craig is in the house. Craig, hello from Little Blessings Brewing, South Australia. I love it. I love it. To my Australian friends in the chat, do Australians do they refer to Australia as down under? Do you say that yourself, or is that just something stupid that people from the other hemisphere say? And did that originate with you, with England, or somewhere else? I don't know. Fill me in. These are the things that I like to learn about.